Welcome to today's episode, brought to you by the Women in Medicine Summit, a transformational CME conference happening September 13th to 14th at the Drake Hotel in Chicago. Engage in leadership programming, learn negotiation skills, receive on-site coaching and mentoring, and see who will win this year's I Stand With Her awards. This year, we're excited to offer unique programming that includes a special session on how using improv comedy can bring fun back into medicine. We also have financial sessions tailored to help you navigate the complexities of personal and professional finances. Discover ways to advance into leadership roles, combat burnout, and either reignite your love for your current role or find joy in a new career path. Don't forget our Friday evening gala, a highlight this year you definitely won't want to miss. Register now at womeninmedicinesummit.org and be part of the movement that is shaping the future of healthcare. Join us to network, learn, and celebrate the power of women in medicine.
Welcome to the Revitalizing Doctor podcast. We explore with our guests how you can move from surviving to thriving as a physician. We know that when you connect with your values and authenticity, you can live a life that is fulfilling and not only good for you, but drives the necessary transformation in healthcare to take better care of our physicians, which means better care for our patients. Hi, just want to give you a reminder that in the month of July, we're taking a break from our monthly Revitalize rooms. We'll be back in August. These are free women physician professional development sessions that we do virtually, and our next one will be August 30th at 10 a.m. If you'd like to be involved and attend the session, please give us an email at revitalizemm.info@gmail.com. The MM stands for mastermind, and that's the format we use for our group sessions. So that's revitalizemm.info@gmail.com. And then just a reminder that our mastermind course that we'll be offering this fall is focused on career transitions, and that will begin September 7th and meet 5 times. We did our first career transitions course in spring of 2022, and I just had lunch with one of the course participants, and I asked her, how did you feel the course changed your life and what you're doing career-wise? And she said the biggest thing she took away from it was the course gave her back time to really focus on what she wanted to do next as she was approaching a career transition. So by signing up for this program, you're going to have the dedicated time and space to really focus on what your values are, what's worked well for you in the past, what hasn't worked, and what you need going forward to have a more fulfilling career. So you don't need to have a plan. Come to us with your concerns, your frustrations, your hopes, your dreams, and we'll work together as a group to come up with a more fulfilling career for you. The other thing she mentioned is she was previously practicing as an emergency physician, and she's likely pivoting to some other type of clinical and non-clinical work. And the course really helped her move past the guilt that she had around, quote, leaving emergency medicine. And, what we really believe at Revitalize is whatever specialty you trained in, you are still that physician. You still have all that training and all that expertise, but you are more than your specialty. And physicians are able to do a lot of different types of work, clinically, non-clinically, and even moving outside of medicine. So we're going to help you work through your particular situation, and Linda Lawrence and I would be happy to schedule a one-on-one consultation with you, hear about your specific situation, and see if the Career Transitions course is a good fit for you or potentially some individual coaching. To learn more, check out our website, www.peoplealwayshcc.com/revitalize, or send us an email at revitalizemm.info@gmail.com. And without further ado, we'll hop into this week's episode with Dr. Gende. I am so excited today to have Dr. Alecia Gende as my guest. She is both an emergency medicine physician and also sports medicine and splits her time equally between both departments. And she's the first person on the podcast to also be an assistant professor in orthopedics, which I think is really cool. If that's not enough, she's also the head team physician for St. Mary's University in Winona, Minnesota. She's also team physician for US Ski and Snowboard, which sounds so amazing. And she's fellowship trained in primary care sports medicine, which she obtained through the University of Iowa, where she also did her emergency medicine training and was a chief resident. Perhaps most uniquely, and really resonates with me as a veteran, she also is a prior Navy nurse and deployed twice, both to Djibouti, Africa, and Al Assad, a place that we share in common. That's also where I deployed, probably, several years after that, but we were still there. So just an amazing list of accomplishments and a really unique mix, which is why we're really excited to have her on the Revitalizing Doctor podcast, because this interesting mix is what really draws us to the guests that we have on the show. So thank you so much for taking time to be here. It's great to have you.
Thank you, Andrea. Thanks for the wonderful introduction. It's great to be here.
So what stands out to me most on your CV here is that you were a nurse before you were a physician. And for maybe some of our listeners, especially if you're going into medical school, that may not seem unique, but it's actually incredibly unique to be a nurse and then move into medical school for a lot of different reasons, which I'm sure we'll get into. But tell us about that decision and your life experiences that led you from nursing to medicine.
I am, I would say, a non-traditional early in my career as a physician, and graduated nursing school back in 2000 with the desire to be, like Nurse Carol Hathaway back in the days of the TV show ER, if anybody remembers that. Worked as a med-surg nurse, became an ER nurse, worked at a level 1 trauma center in St. Paul, Minnesota, and very, very much enjoyed it. 9/11 happened, and I urgently felt a need to give back to my country and serve my country in its time of need. So served as a reservist, wasn't deploying and desired to deploy. So went active duty, gave up my, many $1,000 bonus to serve as a reservist and said, nope, I want to deploy. And then got my wish. Served at Naval Hospital Camp Pendleton, deployed to Djibouti, Africa, and eventually to Al Assad, Iraq, which is where I had this kind of revelation, if you will, or realization that, man, I want to be a physician. I served as the lead flight nurse for my unit, Charlie Surgical Company in Al Assad, Iraq, and that involved me being the sole provider of care to injured or ill, critically injured or ill individuals on the back of a helicopter. I was the person there managing the airway, managing blood, managing medications, doing anything and everything for the 50-minute or 60-minute flight. And it was there that I realized, like, I can do this and I want to do this. I want more impact on the plan of care. I want to be the one who decides what tests we do and put my head to it of like, what's going on here and what can I do about it? What can I do to fix this? That's really where I gained that confidence and that belief in myself, and realized that was a desire I had.
Wow, that is so inspiring and amazing. So tell me more about your experience with deployment. Certainly, it sounds like it was inspirational and led you down the road of medicine. But was it all positive? Was there anything that has stuck with you or was difficult in the time of or afterwards?
I can't say it was, nothing's all positive. It's really kind of a little of what we choose to remember and how we choose to control our reactions to the events that happen to us. I think there were hard times. It was difficult I was the lead flight nurse, so that meant I was on call 24/7, essentially to be available to go if the patient was deemed too sick to go with the current flight nurse who was on call. So I was kind of always on standby. I had the most flights of everybody. We only flew with intubated patients. Unless we had two patients, we were not allowed to use a ventilator. The CRNA, who was in charge of all of us, she wanted us very much connected to that patient. So we were bagging the patient the entire time, unless there was two of them. One was on a ventilator. It was a lot to cognitively process. It was very unique and bizarre to be literally the breath of an Iraqi enemy who, if he were awake and not breathing by my hand, would be trying to kill me, or worse. It was unique to be flying, taking care of Iraqi military, whether fighting for us or against us. Again, being their hand of life as their brothers and sisters in arms are on the ground shooting up at us. We usually flew at night, and you could, every time you flew, you would see tracer rounds coming up at you. And you're like, man, I'm flying. This is your teammate that I'm helping. There's 5 of us, or however many of us in this helo that are trying to help your guy, and you're trying to take us down. It's such a paradox that you can't really wrap your head around it. It led to some interesting essays and discussions in my application process throughout my career in medicine. But yeah, there's a lot of different things, and that's just in the patient care side of it. Let alone the politics of deployment and being one of 10 females on a base of 5,000 males. There was a lot of different unique experiences, but you choose to take back the good, or kind of pocket the bad if you need to. But I'd say overall, like you said, very inspiring. I think serving as the lead flight nurse is the best job I'll ever have. You can't serve a better population. And it was just kind of the right time, the right job. And then it led me to all these other new experiences in life, which I've been so grateful for.
So let's lean on that experience a little bit. You were saying that you were one of maybe 10 women on a base with 5,000 men. And certainly, there's still a lot of gender dynamics that happen in medicine. What did you learn about being in that, I would say, pressure cooker of being so few women? There was a really unique experience for me as well. It was really the first time that I felt so under a microscope, that I walked into almost every room and I was the only woman. And I could almost sense, I had a Marine Corps deployment, and I could almost sense, like, it was the first time that I really felt that people were making some assumptions and really already kind of writing me off before I even opened my mouth. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Are you a physician mom with school-aged children feeling utterly exhausted? My friend Dr. Sheeta Shaffi invites you to take a little time this summer to join her in a small, intimate group for meaningful conversations. Dr. Shaffi is an emergency physician, coach, and mom to 8-year-old twins. She understands firsthand what you're going through. This isn't a pizza party or a yoga class. You'll meet for 2 one-hour sessions twice a month starting in July to help you move out of exhaustion, let go of mom guilt, and live a life you're not only proud of, but can truly enjoy. Connect with her on LinkedIn or Instagram at Sheeta Shaffi to learn more. Sheeta is spelled Shideh, and Shaffi is spelled Shafie. You can also check the show notes for a link so you can connect with her there as well.
I 100% agree. I was deployed with the Marine Corps unit as well. And I love the Marines. I'm not trying to say anything bad about them. And my numbers aren't accurate. I'm just exaggerating a little, but you're one of few females, and you're 100% right. You're under a microscope. You stand out. My best friend and I, her and I were deployed together in Al Assad. 6 months after we get back, we're in a bar in Carlsbad, and someone comes up to us, "Hey, you're that skinny girl and you're the skinny white girl and the Asian girl who used to work out all the time in Al Assad. This is 6 months later. And this man still remembered us. We're like, wow, you never underestimate how much you stand out. Is something that I learned there. And also, yeah, you're under a microscope. Every single person is aware of everything you do, almost everything you think, because so much of what we're thinking comes out in these microfacial expressions, yeah, they're aware of every single thing. And the dangerous saying that I think it's a Navy saying or a military saying of, perception is reality. And that perception is someone's reality. If they perceive that you're doing this or acting a certain way, or this is your reputation, that becomes their reality. And people can kind of work to make that a legit reality, and create some problems for you, depending on how, again, you react to the events that go on around you.
Yeah, and for some of our listeners who aren't in the military, there's a strange dynamic that happens when you're on deployment. And there's this concept in the military of fraternization. So essentially, you can't have overly familiar relationships with somebody that's below you or above you in rank. And certainly it's you're under scrutiny with is there something romantic happening on a deployment or something like that. But I learned pretty quickly that, I had to kind of wall myself off from people, and that had its own cost associated with it because I felt very isolated while I was deployed. And it's hard when you're mainly around men, and then you realize that if you're having lunch every day or, even, I don't know, working out, people will make assumptions about you that may have very real consequences.
Agree. Yep. You have to be very aware of that. And, I think that transitions a little bit into the civilian world also. Emergency medicine is still, and sports medicine, they're still primarily male dominated. So, my male colleagues might get to go golf with the boss and golf with each other, but I might not necessarily get involved with that or invited to those kind of outings, just because it's a little different when a male and a female hang out together. Or go to these work outings together, then if the men can kind of, let's go grab a beer and talk through that case. But if a male physician asks the female physician, can we go grab a beer and talk through that case, it becomes a little bit different. So I think that does carry through a little bit to the civilian world as well. Just something we have to all be aware of.
So how have you navigated that? Because I would say, yes, emergency medicine is still pretty male dominated, but certainly your role in sports medicine is very male dominated. So how have you been successful and able to move your career forward and get these really amazing opportunities, like being on the team physician for US Ski and Snowboard, when you can't necessarily have these one-on-one meetings with men?
I would say you have to have a good, strong reputation, and you have to be willing to put the time in and to do the little things that will really stand out. You might not get to go have a beer with, whomever, but you do get to connect with the athletes. You do get to connect with the athletic trainers. You do get to connect with, your male colleagues or superiors, if you will. And you can make these connections. You just have to make them in a different way. You have to make yourself stand out as you're conversing at work. You have to get, dare I say, like personal at work. You have to show them who you are as a person and make that personal connection at work instead of at the bar or instead of on the golf course, if you will, to just use stereotypes. But I think it's very possible. And as I'll let you know too, I'm one of the many team physicians for US Ski and Snowboard. We serve in a pool of physicians, and it's an excellent opportunity that I think I earned essentially during fellowship. One of the attendings that trained me in sports medicine serves as one of the team physicians as well, and had put my name in as somebody who would be interested in it and would serve the team well. So it's making that connection at work. Instead of making that connection outside of work. And I think as women, we're very good at that. We're very collegial, and I think that can benefit us in different ways than it can benefit our male counterparts.
Yeah, there's a really good book called Good Guys, which is written by two professors One is has served at the Naval Academy, and essentially they lay out a very concrete way that male bosses can interact appropriately with women and help them move their careers down the line and avoid a lot of these pitfalls. And I think back to my time in the Navy, and I had one department head that was really fantastic at this. And I had an interest in stress inoculation and performance under pressure, which he had a lot of expertise in. And he really mentored and sponsored me in a wonderful way. And there was never any feelings of creepiness or inappropriateness. And we always met at work. And I really appreciate that, that he took an interest in my career and stayed professional during it. And unfortunately, I've had other experiences that don't fall into that category. But I'm really hoping that, you know, the book Good Guys and other male mentors and sponsors and allies that are succeeding in this can continue to provide a good example, because we can do a lot as women. And at Revitalize, you know, we definitely want to empower women to take charge of their careers. But the truth is, when there's still so many men in power, they have to do a better job too. And they have to act ethically and help us move our careers as well.
Yeah, I've been fortunate as well to have some great sponsors in our male colleagues, especially here in sports medicine. I wouldn't, and in Iowa at sports med, like I wouldn't be where I am without them. I'm very, very grateful to have the professional relationship that I do with them.
That's awesome. So you leave the Navy, and then did you go straight to medical school, or was there something in between?
I was lucky. I had to take some prerequisites. I got to be the elder in the classroom with a bunch of 18-year-olds taking like math refresher courses and Gen Chem and then biochem and all these other basic physics and all these things that I was missing from my nursing degree. And then after a couple of years of that, then I went to medical school just outside of Chicago at Midwestern University.
How was that process for you? I mean, because at this point you were not only, I mean, you were a very experienced nurse. You were at the top of probably the nursing, certainly emergency medicine and trauma world. And then you have to go back to undergrad courses with a bunch of pre-med students. What was that experience like?
The whole experience going from being, like an ER nurse for 11 years and then kind of starting from scratch, if you will, in the world of medicine was humbling throughout every single part of it. It being, I don't remember how old I was, but I was in my early 30s in classrooms with 18-year-olds. You would find the one who was, 22 years old or 24 years old, and you would create your own study group, and maybe you would find the one who was 19 or 18 that you just kind of connected with, and get through whatever part of the class you had to get through together. Starting medical school, I would continue to use the word humbling, because you think, oh, I know how to do this, I can do that. Look at me, I'm going to go sit and talk to this patient, and it's not scary or weird. It's actually where I feel most comfortable. You need an IV? You're great. I'll go get an IV. Who needs bloods drawn? We need a Foley catheter. I could do all of those things with ease. At the same time, they would ask different pathophys questions, different plan of care questions, and you'd be, shoot, okay, back to the reading that I did. Yeah, okay, I'm going to this way. And you'd answer whatever questions you needed to on rounds or presenting a case. It was all very humbling, because you are starting from scratch. You have these basic skills, and these, how to connect with people, how to serve people. But then being the one who is leading is a completely different experience. It was a transition during medical school. And then even again, I had to retransition in my first year of residency, going from the person who is at the bedside, who is, nurses are the number one relationship with the patient and the nurse. That's number one in their experience in healthcare, I think. And leaving that and then having the physician experience as as opposed to the nursing experience where you're there holding hands, you're, wiping foreheads and being the one who's more away from the bedside, and putting in orders, dictating notes, leading the team. I had to transition and kind of let go of those tasks and that experience in medical school in my like third and fourth year. And then again, as an intern in emergency medicine, where my first couple shifts, I wanted to do the nursing side of it. I had to like have a talk with myself. Hey, Alecia needs to do this. and, I was very glad that I realized that before any of my attendings realized that and pulled me, I didn't need to be pulled aside and told that, but it was a hard thing to let go of. Even throughout residency, I would be counseled on, you spend so much time talking with patients, and that's nothing I want to let go. That's where I get my most enjoyment. That's part of what makes work fun, is connecting with people. And then finding out, in my perspective of emergency medicine, everybody comes, and sports medicine, everybody comes to us as physicians. They come to us with a question. And that question might be medical, it might not be, but our job is to weed through everything and make that connection so we can get to the heart of that question and then answer that question. And that's something that you do as an RN and you do as a physician. And I think my experience as an RN allows me a little quicker to kind of connect quickly and kind of get through the weeds and be there in that experience with the patient.
Just think that's such an amazing dual experience that you've had. And what I really like about it is I think people like you that have had this experience can provide a roadmap and help us navigate some of the challenges that we're having. It's well documented that female residents often experience, I would say at the extreme end, bullying, at the less extreme end, little digs by nurses. And I'm wondering if you ever experienced that.
100%. Being a nurse, or being a former nurse, or you'll always be a nurse. Being a nurse initially, I don't think that made me immune to it. I'm not certain if it made me more of a target. I don't think so. Having my nursing background, and I think a little bit of my experiences in the military, I have a more collaborative style of care and a collaborative style of running the department, a collaborative style of running a critical situation. And I think most women do, but mine might be a little different with my background. And that, I think, collaborative style is sometimes seen as weakness or hesitancy. And that will put sometimes myself in a position where people will think, hey, she doesn't know what she's doing. She's not confident. She's not competent. And that can let some other people who might not be in this necessarily, might not be the other physician or whatnot, my attending physician or the charge nurse, if you will, but it will let someone else kind of take the leadership role in that setting. And you have to, in my opinion, be strong enough and confident enough to, hey, I see what's going on, to recognize it, not take it personal, realize that this is a byproduct of my collaborative nature, of my nursing background, and my desire to include nurses in the plan of care. And hey, what was your assessment? This was my assessment. What did you get? This was my history. What was your history? To see kind of when someone is maybe sneaking the leadership from you or sucking the leadership from you and trying to undermine your leadership. You have to be aware of that, and then professionally and competently and confidently reassume that role of leadership, while kind of still maintaining, my collaborative sense. This was something I struggled with as in my first 6 months as an attending, maintaining my collaborative sense, which I think is valuable. And I think brings up nursing as well as brings me up as a physician. Lifts the whole team essentially if everybody can be involved. But I think it's something I struggled with initially, and like being the nurse, the physician, the collaborator, and the leader at the same time.
It's so fascinating how things change over time and with more experience and maturity. I think when I would experience a nurse that was clearly trying to undercut me, or that was treating me differently than my male co-residents, the initial reaction was, disappointment, anger, that was happening. But now, with years of kind of being in these experiences and learning more about gender dynamics, that behavior comes from them being abused. We're all in this abusive cycle of healthcare, and nurses, and I'm sure you can speak to this much better than me, have experienced tons of gender bias and discrimination and mistreatment by physicians and administrators and senior nurses to junior nurses. And this abuse, just like a child that gets abused by a parent that then goes on to abuse their children, a senior nurse has a power differential over a resident. And sometimes, because they've been abused, the easiest thing for them to do is to lash out at a resident. Doesn't make it right, but it does happen.
And two, the culture is set, right? So it's a huge effort to change the culture or to start a culture shift. I think classically it would be, the doctor says to do this and a nurse does this, and a nurse would in time, learn more and more. And like you said, like the junior resident would be easily directed or undercut by a more experienced nurse, for good or for bad, right? Sometimes I'll tell the nurses, and I saw this as my role when I was working with ER residents. My job is to keep you safe and to keep the patient safe, because sometimes as an RN you pick up this, oh hey, we don't want to do this dose of this medication. Maybe we could use this medicine because I've seen this used 100 times. I've never seen this one used. And I think we have to appreciate when nursing is giving us that input of like, hey, are you sure about this? It's a fine line, right? Of, are you being undercut, or is their experience giving you an opportunity to learn something? And that, again, like I said, it's shifting the culture and creating that team and collaborative approach, I think, which can be hard because emergency medicine, I don't know that it's known for the collaboration as much as not.
Yeah, I think it varies tremendously among departments and the cultures that are developed. I've worked at places that are amazing. The collegiality, the teamwork, the anticipation, communication. Boy, when you're in a team like that, it's almost magical,
Excellent.
really.
Yeah.
I just have to share this one story of mine, and it really highlights how nurses can have this amazing role with shepherding residents through their training. And I was on my ICU rotation. It was a really tough ICU rotation, and it's kind of like the way it always happens. It was the end of the day, like around 5 p.m. Everyone else on the team goes home, and I get pummeled with 6 complex ICU admissions,
Of
one
course.
after another.
Of course.
And this place had these ridiculous notes. They didn't use the EMR. We had to type up like the 6-page Word document. So it was like 36 pages of notes I was going to end up writing that night. And they were also extremely sick people, most importantly. And I was sitting at the desk, and just, you just have these moments where you're like, what am I doing? Why did I choose this? I'm so tired. Like, I'm never going to be able to get through all this work. And these people are really sick. Am I going to make a mistake? Just all these thoughts are, going through your head. And I must have had like this just look of angst on my face. And one of the ICU nurses walked over and she goes, Dr. Austin, do you need a plate of food? Such a
Yes, I
small
do.
gesture. It was such a small gesture, and, like, instantly I felt like, "Oh my gosh." I mean, she wasn't gunning for me to have a bad night. It was quite the opposite. She wanted to make my night a little bit better. So she made me a plate of food. I ate
That's
it.
beautiful.
It was before COVID. I ate it at the nurse's station. And we were fast friends from there, and we're friends to this day. And it just shows me like how much better this could be. You know, we're all getting abused in healthcare, and
Yes.
we're all in this pit, whether you're the nursing assistant, the janitorial staff, or the physician, quite frankly. Even though people like to say physicians have all this power, quite frankly, recently I haven't felt that's the case.
No, I have not either.
Yeah. So the more that we can have this teamwork and compassion for each other, I think is so important, and more important right now when we're seeing just incredible levels of beyond burnout. People are just frankly leaving.
Yes. Very unfortunately, but you're right. Everybody is tired.
Yeah. So on that note, everyone is tired. How are you feeling? How are you doing? Because you're both an emergency medicine physician, and before we started recording, you mentioned you have some kids in the house as well.
Yes. Yep, we have 4 children.
Wow. Yeah. So how are you doing? We're still in the pandemic. I'm not saying the pandemic's over. So how are you navigating this, and what's filling your cup?
That is a great question. I think it's a little of having the variety of 50% emergency medicine, 50% sports medicine that allows me to have 2 clinic days a week, and my clinic days are much different than my emergency medicine days. In the ER, right? It's feast or famine, and you could see 1,500 patients, or you could see 0 patients, right? And I'm obviously over exaggerating, but you could see a whole bunch of patients or none. Um, and then in sports medicine, you have a set clinic schedule, and you might get add-on injections here and there, or add-on last minute. Oh, this athlete twisted their knee and felt a pop. Can you get them in so we can get the MRI and get the whole process started? But for the most part, it's a much more controlled environment, and it allows me to go slower, decompress a little bit. And I work with a different team in the clinic than I do in the emergency department. And that just allows for a little more variety and it allows changing gears, if you will. We work in a critical access rural emergency department, and then we work in our inner city level 3 trauma center. So it's a town of, a little over 50,000 people. So you have 2 completely different paces, and that gives you kind of a different experience as well. From the burnout standpoint, I'm a firm believer in just kind of how you choose to experience things. You can't necessarily control what happens to you, but you can control your reaction to it, and Viktor Frankl style, if you will. And I try very much to, kind of experience things in a positive way and look for that silver lining. I very much prioritize my personal wellness and the promises that I make to myself of I'm going to get outside and go for a walk today. I'm going to go to the gym after clinic. No matter what, I will be at the gym, and that is my recess time. Or before my shift starts, I'll go outside for a 20-minute walk and listen to a book, or not even listen to anything and just have quiet time. I have a sauna. I spend a lot of time in the sauna, especially after 12 or 14-hour shifts in the department, and just kind of breathe and sweat away some of that hardship. I think you find the joys in seeing your children and hearing what their day was, and oh, so and so got this color popsicle and this was the big deal of the day, or this person learned how to ride a bike in the neighborhood and that was the big triumph of the day. And in my family, we give hugs and say good night and I love you before bed, and when I'm there for that, like, I enjoy that, and you allow that to refill your cup, and that moment is the moment that allows you to, yeah, all right, tomorrow morning we're going to get up at 5 o'clock and we're going to be to work and we're going to have a good day. I think you have to look for those things. You have to make promises to yourself and then keep them. And I think we spend so much time inside and sitting down. reading and studying and doing our computer charting and being inside in the hospital, we need to be outside. And I think we need to be moving. And that's something that I definitely prioritize.
The type of emergency medicine that we're practicing right now, the last, I would say, really 10 years, essentially, I graduated medical school in 2011, is unlike any emergency medicine preceding that. The volumes are higher, the complexity is higher, the community resources in many communities is lower. The
Your nursing resources on shift are lower, even.
100%. The corporatization of our medical practice, the door to doc times, the door to disposition, the pressure cooker that emergency physicians are under is unlike any previously. And I don't really think that most emergency physicians, if you're going to show up, what I like to say, and pulling a page out of Brene Brown, if you're going to show up and be a wholehearted emergency physician and you're going to connect with patients and listen to their stories and do the right thing for them, I don't know if it's possible to work a full set of shifts in the current system. And I'm seeing this trend with the guests that we're having on, and my own practice. I'm working 6 to 8 clinical shifts now. I can't. I cannot do 14 shifts a month. 14 or 16. It was kind of, if you worked 8-hour shifts, considered to be full-time emergency medicine. And I've tried it, and it does not work for me at this point in my life.
Yeah, I think it would be really hard to do full-time emergency medicine with all of the demands, all of the staffing shortages, and there's staffing shortages on the physician side as well. So you're either being scheduled above your FTE, or asked and asked and asked to pick up above your FTE. You're working shifts with one less nurse or two less nurses, one less tech. You won't have a paramedic on shift. Like it really is like bursting at the seams, if you will. And I think it would be very difficult. I think if you were working full time, I think 8 hours over 12-hour shifts would be much better for wellness. And I think your days off, you would have to be strictly days off. There would be no at home work. And I think that would make it difficult to have a career, right? Because the career side of things, these extra things like the podcast and everything that we do with ASAP and AWEP and all of that, like that's part of the package too, but you would not have any cognitive or emotional energy for any of those things. I think it would be very hard to be full-time ER physician.
Yeah, and it pains me to say that, because I do think there is a way to build our specialty to be workable for full time, and I think we owe it to our residents to create a specialty that they can work in full time. But I'm a pragmatist at heart. Anybody that knows me, and my advice, and I tell this to my residents now, the current situation is beyond our specialty's control. Emergency medicine is, maybe more than any other specialty, inextricably linked to our larger social political system. Unlike other specialties, if you're a urologist, you're an orthopedic surgeon and you don't want to accept Medicaid or, patients with no insurance in your clinic, you can set that expectation. But people don't understand that right now, I think around 70% of patients that go to the emergency department do not pay the full share of the care they're actually receiving. No other medical specialty does that. Can you imagine a group of surgeons or specialists saying, oh yeah, I'm going to open this clinic and my business model is that 70% of the patients will not pay at all or only pay part of their bill?
Right.
Yeah, we are the unfunded mandate. So with that background, I do think it's very smart for residents, and I don't care if you've been practicing emergency for 5 years or 20 years. It's never too late to develop a side gig or niche or something outside, and it doesn't always require a fellowship. I mean, you certainly went the fellowship route and it's worked out really, really well for you. I wanted to do a fellowship, but I was in the Navy while I was an emergency physician, and they didn't think simulation, they didn't value that as a fellowship. Now, the funny part is, the plus side was they gave me all the jobs and titles and experience to become a qualified simulationist. So in the end, the fellowship really didn't matter for me personally. But the main message I want to get across to our listeners is if you're feeling burned out and tired and disappointed, angry, keep putting all the adjectives in there, that's normal. And honestly, if you're not, you may be so shut down that you're just not experiencing normative emotions right now. And it's not just emergency medicine, it's other specialties as well. It's okay if you want to cut down to half time. It's okay if you want to start doing something outside of medicine for income. Real estate is one that seems a lot of physicians get into. That is okay. I would much rather have you working part-time and showing up wholehearted and with your wellness than staying in a dysfunctional system at full time and just shutting your body and your mind down.
To see little things as positive things, I think kind of creating that mindset as best
Yeah.
as we can, controlling what we can control,
Exactly. And I think that that's a really key concept too is I feel like at this point, almost every EM shift that I go into is like a house on fire. I didn't set the fire. So I'm going in trying to make my little corner of this fire a little bit dampened, a little bit better. And I just have to really focus on what I can control, that whole internal locus of control and what I can actually influence, because I'm not going to fix all of emergency medicine's problems in any given shift. I just have to focus on what I can exert a little bit of positivity on.
Yeah, you might be able to fix that shift, or you might be able to fix that one patient encounter. And yeah, yeah, take the victories where we can.
100%. Yeah. I always try to think, if there's one patient today, if there's one, or one interaction with my resident that's really special, or you see that little light bulb moment, that's it. That's why I'm here, that one moment.
Yep, exactly.
Well, I want to be respectful of your time, and we didn't even get into the sports medicine side of things. So I think we'll have to do a whole episode just on that in the future. But I'd like to
Okay.
move into our wrap up questions. So the first one is, what do you do to stay physically fit?
I enjoy movement. I enjoy CrossFit and weightlifting, running. I like hunting, hiking. Uh, those are my main things. And I'm a huge fan of sauna.
That's awesome. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about the health benefits of sauna. So I'm really interested in that.
Yeah, so I would direct everybody to Dr. Rhonda Patrick, who she's a huge proponent of sauna use as well. She'll talk to us about different studies talking about like all-cause mortality rates dropping by 4 times with with daily use of saunas. I think these are different studies coming from the Finns, who they're the sauna gods, right? But 20 minutes a day, 4 times drop of all-cause mortality. It's also great for your skin. It is kind of like a workout, right? Your heart rate goes up. Just kind of the benefits of the meditation that occurs sitting in this kind of steamy hot sauna. I think it's good for your joints as well. I enjoy it. I enjoy many aspects of it, and it helped. I created a nice little steam room for myself when I was kind of recovering from COVID. So that was good
Oh,
for that too. It's the ultimate humidifier, if you will.
wow. Are you doing okay now?
Oh yeah. That was last year. So
Okay.
yep.
All right.
But I think it helped. I think it definitely helped with kind of the coughing and the breathing component of recovering from the COVID infection. So I have
Yeah.
no studies to prove or anything, but just anecdotally, and I loved getting in there and steaming it up.
Yeah, I mean, you say no studies, but I listened to Huberman Lab podcast as well, and there are some immunology studies about if you feel an illness coming on. Now, not when you're running a fever. We want to be clear about that. You should not get in a sauna or steam if you're running a fever. But if you don't have a fever and you think you're getting sick, it is helpful for your immune system to have that extra heat. And what I like
Those heat shock proteins and stuff, maybe?
yeah, maybe it's something related to that, but it makes sense. And I'm sure you've had the same conversation I've had a million times with parents bringing their children in with fevers. Fevers are not a bad thing. That's our immune
normal.
system. It's trying to heat up and take care of what's in there. So that's so cool. Well, last question. We are moving through a period of extreme change and tumult in emergency medicine and the world in general. What would be your one piece of advice to listeners to navigate this with a little bit more calm and grace?
I would say if you had to sum it up in one word, I would say kindness. I think as we treat each other and treat patients, being kind is the best thing that we can do for each other. And I think, kill them with kindness, if you will, for the opposition or the people who have differing viewpoints. Just we need to be more kind to each other overall.
Oh my gosh. Wow. That's such a beautiful way to end the episode. And I couldn't agree more. And when you're feeling like you can't be kind, then at least be quiet. And hopefully
That's great.
hopefully in a few minutes you can come back with a kinder response.
If you can't be kind, be quiet. Yes. Put that on a bumper sticker.
Oh, this has been such a treat. Can our listeners connect with you? Do you have any social media presence or website or anything if they want to learn more about what you do?
I do not. On that personal wellness thing, I have not gotten into the social media world. Nor do I have a personal website. People can always find me at Mayo Clinic Health System, Southwest Wisconsin, in La Crosse. There's contact information for me there. But yeah, I haven't built up a social media presence. We'll see. We'll see if I ever do. I don't know.
Well, that's totally 100% okay, but that's awesome. So if people wanted to come in and see you, if they have a sports medicine injury, they can check out, is it Mayo's website?
Yep, Mayo Clinic Health System.
Okay,
And
awesome.
anybody interested in sports medicine and emergency medicine, or kind of how to navigate both sides of that fence, I'm super happy to help mentor anybody who's looking to get into it. I would highly recommend it.
That's awesome. So certainly our listeners can reach out to me and I can connect them to you. And we'll have the link to your sports medicine page in the show notes. So Dr. Gende, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Great meeting you.
Thanks for listening to the Revitalizing Doctor podcast. This podcast is brought to you by Revitalize Women Physician Circle, founded by Dr. Linda Lawrence and Dr. Andrea Austin, your host. You can connect with us on our website at www.peoplealwayshcc.com/revitalize. You can tweet at us at Revitalize Women, and please connect with us on LinkedIn at Revitalize Women Physician Circle. We look forward to helping you go from surviving to thriving. This podcast represents our opinions and the opinions of our guests. It does not represent any entity that we work for or with, including the military, the government, or any other institution. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again soon.
Hi, it's Dr. Risa E. Lewis, dropping in to tell you about a book that Dr. Adara Landry and I wrote. It's called Microskills, Small Actions, Big Impact. It's a business self-help book coming in 2024 by HarperCollins. Pre-order now. Microskills, Small Actions, Big Impact, wherever you buy your books.